Big Sales National Football Show. Welcome aboard. And what has to go down as one of the greatest Super Bowls I've watched in a long time. That's as good as it gets. Drama back and forth. Tremendous play. A lot of things answered. Some question marks. It was a tale of two halves. Eagles dominated in the first half. Kansas City took that game over in the second half coming out of halftime. Some shocking revelations come out of the game. It was a great Super Bowl. It was a great Super Bowl. Eagle fans, your coaching staff cost you an opportunity to win your second Super Bowl in 5 years. They were atrocious. They were atrocious, and in the second half, not only outcoached, situational play calling was awful. Was awful. Especially on the defensive side of the football. Terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I'm going to tell you again the list that I brought up to you. It came to fruition. Josh Johnson, Brock Purdy, Daniel Jones, Davis Webb, Andy Dalton, Daniel Jones, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Ryan, Tyler Heineke, Davis Mills, Kenny Pickett, Cooper Rush. You got into the room with the best quarterback on the planet, and he destroyed you in the second half. And Gannon had no answers for Eric Bieniemy and for Andy Reid. None. Holy cow. Those coaches should be embarrassed. Some of the players, too. I got a list of Eagles who didn't get off the bus. Ryan says, refs gave the Chiefs this win. Absolutely a dumb comment. Even your own guy said he held them. Bradbury said it. Was it a call I would have made? No, Ryan. But don't go there. You were out-schemed, out-coached, out-thought, so with situational play calling, destroyed you in the second half. Don't go with the refs. Don't be a lame-ass fan. You were outplayed. There's no question those coaches just sucked out loud. Jalen Hurts was spectacular. He was spectacular. Best game of the year. Hurts was spectacular. You couldn't have asked him to do any more. Look, the fumble, I get it. It was a critical moment in the game, and it cost them big time. I get it. I'm not going to diminish the fact, though, that Jalen was not good. He was spectacular. Couldn't ask him to do any more. Your special teams finally cost you on field position in the Super Bowl. Terrible. Third worst special teams unit in the entire league reared its head. The turnover was enormous. Now, man, been hearing you all year long talk down on Jalen. Defense got beat up. I don't give a shit what you heard me say, Ryan. He was spectacular. Do you want me to sit here and lie? He was spectacular. Did you see a different game? Did you see a different game? Do you actually want me to lie? I am not a sports guy that doesn't tell you what we all watched. I'm not Skip Bayless, dude. I'm not a denier when a guy plays well. What a dumbass. He was great. By the way, in the second half, you know what happened in the second half? I don't know if you guys watched this. But they were running these crossing patterns, and Bradbury and Slade were confused. They confused them the entire second half. They confused them. They were running these crossing routes, and they were trying to pass guys off. They got exposed. They could not cover Jimmys and Joes. Okay? They could not cover the Jimmys and Joe. Dude, second half, they were running those crossing patterns, and it completely confused the secondary. The secondary was confused, and the defensive line didn't get off the bus. Emmanuel Sills, we got out coach. Jalen Bald, he earned his contract. Let's get to the game before we start talking contract. But I will say one more time, Jalen Hurts played his ass off. He was fantastic in the game. Fangio was a consultant. Dude, in my opinion, there's too many voices in the room. This is a Howie mistake. So you're going to bring in a consultant for the Super Bowl and have another voice in the room? No wonder it was confusion. You were doing shit that you're not supposed to be doing. This is a front office error right here. What do you think Andy Reid had consultants for the Super Bowl? It was Bieniemy, Spagnuolo, and it was Andy Reid. Nobody else was giving them advice on how to beat Philly. Too many voices. Too many voices in the room. Okay, that's right, Tone. They overcooked the goddamn thing. You had the game won. You were in complete control. It slipped through your fingers. The Eagles had this thing. They were dominating. I'm going to go over the numbers here in a minute. You were dominating. They couldn't stop you. The Chiefs' defense was decent in the first half, much better in the second half. You had this thing. Your coaches fucked this thing up. Terrible coaching. By the numbers. First downs, pretty even, 25-21. Favor the Eagles. Here's the difference in the game and the efficiency that the Chiefs had over you. You had 72 plays to 52. The Eagles had 20 more offensive plays to the Chiefs. You kept this team under 60 plays, and they still beat you because you couldn't stop him in the second half. By the way, the kid takes the kneel down instead of going into the end zone, which was a brilliant play because it ate the clock. And there they were. They kicked the game winner. Instead of giving Hurts the ball back. Total yards. Eagles 417 to 340. Passing 302 to 182. Here, a microcosm of the 2021 Chiefs game. How in the world do the Chiefs outrush the Eagles? 158-114. Turnover was enormous in the game. Time of possession. You had the ball 11 minutes more, and you lost. You ran 20 more plays and had 11 more minutes. This is coaching, or lack thereof. Hurts, 27 of 38, 304, 103.4 quarterback rating. 15 carries, 70 yards, 3 touchdowns. The guy counted for 4 touchdowns and 374 yards in offense. He was sensational. Mahomes, 21 of 27, 182, 3 touchdowns, 131.8 quarterback ranking. This guy was almost perfect. Pacheco, 15 carries, 76 yards in the TD. He was very good. Dude, the receivers were great for the Eagles. Devonta, 7 catches, 100 yards. AJ, 6 catches, 96. Goddard made catches. Where in the fuck was Miles Sanders? Dude, you're cut. I want no part of you. You are cut. What an absolute, unbelievable no-show. Miles Sanders, the worst performance since you've been an Eagle in the most important game. $7 million? Not in Philly. You're out. Dude, you're lucky I don't put your ass on a Greyhound. You were terrible. Worst player on the field was Miles Sanders. They needed you. Jalen needed you. The running attack needed you. Nowhere. And if you're hurt, that's more reason for me to dump your ass. You're gone. I am not even going to call your agent. I am going to let you find out through the media, Twitter, that you've been cut. Or we're not offering you a contract. Why? Why should I give you the decency of giving you a heads up? Why should I do that? Why? You didn't give us the decency of showing up in Glendale. Travis Kelce, 6 catches, 81 yards in the touchdown. They couldn't cover him. Terrible performance by your coaching staff. Jonathan Gannon is awful, and it reared its head. You had no answers for elite quarterbacks. You can't stop them. I'm going to make a point to you guys. Here, watch this. Here is the 2021 Chiefs and Eagle game. And I want you to see the trends here. This is the 2021 game. The Chiefs ran for 200 yards, held the Eagles to 103. In the Super Bowl, the Chiefs won that again, 158 to 115. Third down, Chiefs were 9 to 10. Eagles were 6 to 12. In the Super Bowl, 4 of 8, the Eagles were 11 of 18. Dofi says Gannon cannot game plan for elite quarterbacks. He's a liability, completely a liability. He's terrible against elite quarterbacks. He's terrible. By the way, the pass rush was non-existent. Hassan Reddick did not get off the bus. Passing. In the 2021 game, Hurts outpassed them here too. 358 to 271. Can you imagine this? The Chiefs had more of a balanced attack than the Eagles did in both games. 182 passing to 302. Check this out. You had more plays in the 2021. 72 to 63. Almost the same exact amount of plays that they hammered you in 21, beating you in the Super Bowl. They basically took the same game plan because they know the coaches weren't going to be any different. This came to player accountability. Some of these guys didn't show up. But Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy and Spagnuolo knew they weren't going to do anything out of their character. They basically ran the same game plan without Tyreek Hill. They beat you without Tyreek Hill. They beat you without Tyreek Hill. You had all the advantages. All the advantages. Except at the two most important places, coaching and quarterback. And it reared its head. Nick Sirianni and that coaching staff, it was like JV varsity. And I will say this about Andy Reid. He validates himself as one of the greatest coaches of all time, winning 2 now. You know, we had question marks on him. Now, all answered. I actually think, too, that his time management, especially in the second half, was brilliant. The Eagles had this thing. You're going to regret this 5 years from now, 7 years from now. You're going to regret this because it slipped through your fingers. The best roster, supposedly, in the history of the franchise, defensively laid an egg. Mahomes didn't have to throw for 350 yards. He had to be efficient. And efficiency scoring. They weren't going to beat Philly by kicking field goals. I know they kicked the game winner. That was with 3 seconds left. They had to get in the end zone, and they did. They could completely confuse the Eagles secondary. James Bradbury and Darius Slay were awful. Gardner Johnson was great. Got beat a few times, but he's the best player on defense. Hassan Reddick, awful. F. The defensive tackles, F. What was one of the things that we said too? Hey, the Achilles heel for the Eagles is the run defense, and it reared its head again. Don't think goes, why is Quez Watkins even on the field? That guy's a marshmallow. It hits you in the hands. Jalen hits you in the hands. Guys, do you agree? That Quez Watkins drop, in my opinion, is right in the Alshon Jeffries drop in New Orleans. I will never forget that drop. Okay? The 2 drops that I've seen in the last 5 years in Eagles history was the Alshon Jeffries drop when Foles threw him the ball and Quez dropping that ball going across the middle. Hits him in the freaking hands. I agree. It's bigger because it's the Super Bowl. But Andy took the same game plan out. He knows how to beat Jonathan Gannon and Nick Sirianni. He knows, run the ball against them. Eagles can't stop the run. Hey, and by the way, one more time, Jordan Davis, sorry, fat guy, you got to be better. You got to be better. You've got to be better. You've got to be a factor. The 13th pick in the draft has brought nothing to the Eagles. Nothing. Man, I guess the reason I'm so fired up today is because you had this thing. Okay? You had this. When you let greatness slip through your fingers like this, you will never in a million years, Eagle fans, football fans, hey, and hey, watch this. Let me tell you about the call at the end of the game. Okay? Let me tell you the call at the end of the game, Bradbury. Do you make that call? Probably not. But that's not what cost the game. What cost the game is the Eagles secondary and the front four were non-existent in the second half. That's what lost you the game. You didn't stop Mahomes once. They scored on every possession. And they only had like 4 possessions. You had the game. You had it. You were in complete control. All you had to do was continue to run the ball. I would have had Jalen Hurts run the ball more. Miles Sanders was a no-show. He hurt you. Miles Sanders, Bradbury, Slay, Kaiser White, Hassan Reddick, all those guys sucked. Prod goes, Hurts played his best game ever. He did. The defense has to get one damn stop. Dude, that's right. I'll say it one more time to you. Jalen Hurts was spectacular. He was spectacular. He didn't outplay Mahomes. If you're just looking at the numbers, you know how many times you guys come back to me and tell me, well, Sills, you know, the postseason for Jalen, you have to look more than just the numbers. His efficiency. They scored a touchdown every series but the last one, the game-winning field goal. He did not outplay Mahomes. He did not. Mahomes had 126 quarterback rating. Come on, man. The only incomplete pass he had in the second half was a throwaway. Don't start talking to me about efficiency. Did not outplay him. Again, Jalen was spectacular. And by the way, my friends, you don't get to call yourself outplaying someone when you lose. Don't be part of the new generation where you get a merit badge for showing up. You lost the freaking game. You don't get merit badges for that. Tone, I missed the super chat. Could you please put that up there for me? You don't get credit for that. Do you think we can rebound from this disappointment? We'll get into all this. You do not get a medal for playing well and losing. Where is that mentality? I hope you don't teach your kids that. L's, W's. This is not politics where you move the chains. Jalen outplayed Mahomes. No, he didn't. He lost. The fumble was a critical moment in the game on him. And it cost his team 7. In a game you couldn't make mistakes in. Any bit of field position was going to dictate that game. Jalen had one of the biggest F-ups in the game. You do not get a medal for playing well and losing. The coaching staff, again, completely did not have a feel for the game. They're not good coordinators. They're not. And there's no question that the AFC is by far better than the NFC. There's no question about it. You play bums. You play bums. And remember what I said on Friday? That the Eagle defense will either be validated or it will be overrated. It's overrated. As I've been saying all year, that defense is overrated. You couldn't make a stop in the second half against an elite guy. Then again, you've never stopped an elite guy, ever. Darius Slay, my opinion, not worth the 17, 18 million bucks they're going to pay next year. I don't see it. I'd say from the Vikings game to the Super Bowl. He's been terrible. If Hurts doesn't fumble that ball, my opinion, Eagles probably win the ball game. If Hurts doesn't play as well as he did, the Eagles aren't in the ball game. So it's a trade-off. Miles Sanders, man, has to be one of the most disappointing things on the team right now. God, was he terrible. Man, was he terrible. Terrible. And for the record, the front four of the Eagles, I think they got close a few times, but you weren't going to get Mahomes on the ground. He's too smart for you. Chaos. Do Eagles bring an experienced coordinator in? I'm going to get to all this. I want to my feelings on how I saw the game. God, I watched that first half and I'm like this. Man, they got this thing. They got this thing. All of a sudden, they started chipping away. And when they went down on that first series and scored, I said, wow, Philly's in trouble. Lovie Smith or Vic Fangio, got to be a guy with more. I want more of a creator back there. Chris, you had it. You did. It was in the palm of your hands. Scott, thank you. It was in the palm of your hands. You had this thing. Man. This officially now is a turd burger. 2017 beat Brady and Belichick. Remember what I told you? The reason that you'll lose. Hey, Tone, remember I said this. I said this a couple weeks ago. The reason you won't win the Super Bowl is because of your coaching staff. If Doug Peterson is the coach of this football team, this is a Howie deal here. If Doug's the head coach of that game on Sunday night, he wins it. Doug would have won that game. Doug would have won that game. With Frank, with Schwartz, they'd have won that game. Playing 7 yards off the receivers killed us. No question. Doug Peterson would have won that Super Bowl. You put training wheel coaches, and because the players had a great year, the coaches are the ones that are overrated. The players had great years. You can't sit here, and I'm not going to do this. Watch this, guys. In my opinion, some of them had a bad game, not a bad year. Was it the most critical game of the year? Yes. Yes. Did you want to see that in that moment? Absolutely not. But I'm not going to sit here and go like this. C.J. Gardner-Johnson played poorly this year because that's not true. Hassan Reddick played poorly this year. That's not true. That's not true. Josh Sweat had to really turn around. True. Didn't have a good Super Bowl. All that's true. Your coordinator never changed. This coaching staff has been hidden by really great play this year. They're not good. Jalen Hurts was spectacular. Doug Peterson wins that game Sunday. You need better coaching. Nick Sirianni's not the guy. He's not. You know why he's the guy in Philly? Because he's Howie's guy. How should a general manager have say on who your coordinators are in your game plan? This is the Howie meddling. Everyone's got a department in that office. GM, head coach, assistant coach, player. Howie Roseman also cost you here. You don't have proper assistant coaches on that staff. And these guys are up for other jobs. Man, you don't have to be very talented nowadays. You don't have to be very talented. You just do not. All you have to have is Howie knee pads. And you can get a job in that NovaCare Center. Dude, this is why Doug was fired and left, is because of what you saw on Sunday. Inexperienced coaching. You had inexperienced coaching. Andy Reid and his staff coached the Eagles coaches' pants off them. I don't even know why they were wearing headsets. Mahomes was good. Spectacular? I don't know. He was efficient because the coach put him in a position to be efficient. They started running those crossing routes in the second half. Jonathan Gannon didn't even know what he was looking at. Did you understand that? That Jonathan Gannon, how do you follow me? It's so frustrating. How do you stop crossing routes? You jam the receiver at the line of scrimmage. My God almighty. You want to hear this? Eric Bieniemy said this. We were confusing them in the second half. They didn't know what the crossing routes that we were running. Go back and listen to Bieniemy talking. Go back and listen. Bieniemy was saying, yeah, they didn't really pick it up. Kelsey even came out and goes like this. You know, we were starting to run our routes, and then we changed up our route patterns in the second half, and it confused the linebackers. How many times did you see the wide receivers for Kansas City wide ass open? By the time the Eagles recognized what was going on, it was too late. It was too late. Brother Hannibal Sirianni needed to surround himself with seasoned coordinators. Brother, I'm going to give you the best example of that. When Sean McVay got the job in Los Angeles, who did he hire? Who was his first hire? Who was the first guy that Sean McVay hired? Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips. Man, it was right there for you. You had it. You had it. It was like watching a piece of ice in a cup just melting. And as you got to the fourth quarter, you just knew there was no stopping it. The best roster in Philadelphia Eagle history and the worst coaching staff in the this is like Rich Kotite shit. Not being able to identify what they're doing to you. You were dominating them. Dude, I was like this. Philly's got this thing, man. Philly's got this thing. You got it. I was like, they got this. Scored on that touchdown coming out of the half. I'm like, man, that's the one thing you couldn't do. It was halves of momentum. It was momentum. Once Kansas City grabbed the momentum, man, it was a freight train. Juju had a good game, Small. He did. He had a really good game. Mahomes and Andy Reid and those guys put themselves in. Eric Bieniemy and the entire coaching staff for Kansas City, boy, I'll tell you something. If you could keep that guy and all those coaches there, look at what they had. They had a rookie end. They had 2 corners that were rookies. And because they have an elite quarterback and an elite coach, they're in every ball game. Every ball game they're in. GT, Hurts was spectacular. Let me expand more on Jalen Hurts. I have been very critical of that style of play, and I still am, and I'll always be, because there's not a long shelf life. But I think Jalen Hurts is going to get back into the laboratory, and I probably think you're going to see an even better version next year of this kid. If I was the Philadelphia Eagles, I would get to the table as quick as I can and offer this guy 3 years at $45 million and see if they bite on it. If not, you might want to carry this into next year, and both the organization and Jalen Hurts roll the dice the same way Lamar Jackson did. Here's where I'm going with this with Jalen, okay? If Jalen Hurts puts up another year like this, if I'm Jeffrey Lurie, I don't mind overpaying. I want to see him do it again. You know what the word elite means in the NFL? The guy in Kansas City is putting a resume together that's elite. It's not 1 year shit. It's consistently every year being in the AFC title game. It's consistently putting up the big numbers. It's consistently being in that conversation as the best guy in the league. Jalen played great in a game. He did. Still didn't win it. By the way, Burrow hasn't won one yet either. And Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts are pretty much in the same category right now when it comes to resumes. I'm not talking ability. I'm talking resumes. In my opinion, elite means consistent. And if Klutz doesn't want to bite on 3 years, $45 million, I'm going to go into the year on his rookie contract, and let's see him do it again. And both will be betting on themselves. And if you're the Eagles, once that season's over, I don't mind paying him $50 million. If Jalen Hurts does it again, who's going to mind paying him $50? If he doesn't take the 3 years, $45, I'm going to go into the year with the last year of his rookie contract, because I got to keep my team together. Howie's got to keep that team together. I wrote down all the free agents again. We're going to look at that here in a minute. And we put it on an extension. So I get that year still on his rookie deal. Nick goes, what happens if he doesn't do it? I'll have to overpay like the Cowboys did for Dak. That's what will happen. Because remember something, when the year ends, the new NFL season doesn't start until March 12th of the following year. You can still get a contract done. And you're always going to make the most money where your feet are. Eagles had this. Jalen Hurts once again played in a ball game he couldn't control. Didn't want to admit it, but defense was exposed. D coordinator, terrible. Special teams, even worse. Waste of talent, no preparation, no adjustments. All of that right there, slammers right on. All of that is exactly why it's so frustrating today on this Monday to listen to all of these shows and all of the excuses. F the call. F the year. You had 60 minutes in your hands and you let it go. My God almighty, man, when you let greatness through your fingers, you'll never let it go. I feel for you guys. Yeah. Wow. Had the advantage everywhere except coaching. And I said it all year. Your coaching staff is not good enough. Howie Roseman also cost you this Super Bowl by putting inferior coaches in a position that they're in. Training wheel coordinators, training wheel head coach. You played in a conference that really was horseshit. That whole schedule showed you kind of who you were a little bit. Not that no. Follow me here. The schedule didn't expose your players. They had great years. They exposed your coaches. That schedule is more about the coach's inability. Do you want me to give you examples? By the way, it's not the players. The players were not exposed. They just didn't play well. You don't have 19 weeks of great ball and all of a sudden it happens like that. The coordinators put them all in positions of failure. Look, I'm not letting the players off the hook here. They got to show up also. But watch this. The Chicago game was maybe the worst coach football game of the year. The Super Bowl is now the worst coach game of the year. And look what happened in both games. You got your quarterback injured and you lost the Super Bowl because of coaching. Dude, seriously, the coaches for the Eagles versus the Chiefs, it was varsity versus JV. Man. The Eagles had much deeper and talented roster, and I believe the better team. Andy simply outcoached Gannon. Reid was playing chess, and Gannon was playing checkers. Right on. Second half was so evident of that. I'm like, surely they're not going. Here, help me out here. So you're running crossing routes. You're Boy, I tell you what, if I was a defensive player, I don't know how people didn't. You're running crossing routes and you're backing up like this 3 yards off the ball, and you're allowing that space in front of the linebackers or behind the backers. You had guys running around in the field that were running into each other. Man, they created chaos in the secondary of the Eagles in that game. It was chaos. How do you line 3 yards off the ball when you see what they're doing to you? They were basically almost running illegal picks on you. And you were biting on them. I saw TJ Edwards and Kaiser White run into one another. I'm like, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're seeing. You know why? You haven't played elite quarterbacks. They had 52 plays. You had 73. They were 10 times more efficient than you. Every time they touched the ball, it was positive yardage. Put it this way, it sucks to be a Bird fan right now, and I feel bad for Hurts. I would too. But then again, watch this though, Maniac. You won't be feeling too bad for him in a couple weeks if he takes that 3-year, $45 million deal. Andy Reid had 14 years in Philly. He never won shit. Stop calling him a Hall of Fame coach. He is a Hall of Fame coach. 2 Super Bowl wins. Are you crazy? He's got a miracle worker at quarterback. What are you, nuts? What are you, crazy? That's like saying Pete Carroll. Well, Pete's not a Hall of Famer now because he didn't do shit with the Jets and the Patriots. That's not true. Pete Carroll's going to the Hall of Fame because of what he did in Seattle. Okay? He's going to the Hall of Fame because of what he did in Seattle. This is not George Seifert here. Okay? This is not Steve Mariucci. Andy Reid is Mike Holmgren. He's a modern-day Mike Holmgren. Okay? A modern-day Mike Holmgren. Andy Reid is a better coach than Mike Holmgren. Trade Slay, signed CJ, linebackers, 4 top 100 picks. Savvy DC. Mike Holmgren's not a better coach than Andy Reid. Andy Reid's got 2 Super Bowls now in the last 5 years. I don't know about you. And conference championships. And the kid Patrick Mahomes is 27 years old. He's got 2 Super Bowl MVPs. I don't know about you, but the only guy I can think of that has done something like that, I think, is the guy who was up in New England. Yes, it's fully guaranteed, Bob. That's the only way they would take it. It's fully guaranteed. Andy Reid has now cost the Eagles 2 Super Bowls. That's a way to look at it. I hadn't thought of that. Andy Reid had a prime McNabb and Vic and still could not. Yeah, you know why, James? Too many roosters in the hen house in Philly. Too many roosters in the hen house. Your organization is run by your GMs, not your head coach. And it will always be a problem. Your head coach is not the decision maker in football decisions. Your general manager is. Your general manager put those coaches in that building. And this is a prime example of getting out-coached. What's the one thing Jerry Jones has never been able to replace? Jerry Jones has replaced talent on his roster. He's never been able to replace what? A Super Bowl coach in Jimmy. He never replaced the Super Bowl coach in Jimmy Johnson. And it will be the death spike to Jerry Jones when he's all said and done. It will be the death spike. He couldn't get along with a Super Bowl winning coach. You had this thing. Look at the coach. Hey, you know the glaring difference between the 2017 and the 2022 Eagles? Coaching. Glaring. It's glaring. It's glaring. How do you not go like this? Man, we had a backup quarterback and still Doug Peterson coached the pants off of Belichick and Brady. Can you imagine if Doug was a Super Bowl coach Sunday night? Shit. He wins that thing. They beat one of the greatest teams of all time that year in 17, okay, with a lesser roster than you have right now. The lesser roster won the Super Bowl. Why? Better coach. Wait a minute. The lesser roster last night won. Case closed. Would we not agree? The lesser roster won the game last night. Would we not agree to that? Well, what's that? What's that an element of? What's that the element of? Bad coaching. The lesser roster won the Super Bowl. It goes back to my comment. Would you rather have a $50 million quarterback or the better roster? Last night, the $50 million quarterback won that. God, you had this. Dude, you had the guy it's like you had them on the ropes. Jeffrey Lurie was quick to fire a guy like Peterson for a coach, more amenable in his desires. Can you put that back up there for me, Tone? I want to make sure I read that super chat there, please. Almost as if he wants Jerry Jones type control. It's exactly right. The general manager has the most power in the building in Philly, not your coach. In Kansas City, your coach has the most power. Dan, I feel you are just as upset about this loss as us. I want to thank you for being part of the 2022 journey with us. Much love to you, my friend. Anton, I'm going to say this to you, Anton, and I traditionally don't give merit badges out for effort, but I'll tell you something. They had a great year. The Eagles had a great year. A great year. Something that they can build on. There's going to be a lot of energy at the NovaCare Center. This one hurts. You know why it hurts? Because you know how close you were. Hey, it's one thing to get your doorknobs knocked off. It's another thing to be right there at the altar. And, the bride says no. That's exactly what this was. You had bought all the invitations. You got the church. You've got the post ceremony party ready to go, and she says no at the last second. That's what this is like. You get the carpet pulled out from under you here. Sil's a veteran head coach, will not coach in Philly under Howie's thumb and surveillance. Bob, amen. Everyone knows that. That's why you have no veteran coaches on the coaching staff. Because a veteran, I keep hearing people say Seth Joyner for DC. Do you actually think they'd allow a guy like Seth Joyner in the building to give advice? Because Seth's not going to take any shit from a guy. They don't want that. They want to have control of the narrative. We needed one effing stop, just one. That's right, Slammer. One stop. You couldn't do it. Your general manager and his influence on the coaching staff was rearing its head in the second half. Not so much him having headsets on and such, but the inexperience was blatant. Any moron saw what they were doing that had been involved in football. You could see it. And the thing that really perplexed me was that, okay, look, they're running crossing routes. You know how you slow that down? Jam them at the line. You guys told me all year long. You told me explicitly all year long that you have the best corners in the NFL. How in the world, if you have the best corners in the world, are you playing zone coverage? You don't have the best corners nobody in their right mind would say the Eagles have the best corners and they don't play man. How do you say that? You know why you could say that? You played stiff quarterbacks all year and they were empty calorie stats. David Mills? Kenny Pickett? Come on. And a fraudulent Kirk Cousins. You guys were right on that. I was wrong. How? Your philosophy does not add up if you tell me you have the best corners. How can you have the best corners in the NFL and you don't play man? How? We played zone coverage. Hook me up on this. Is this fair to say that the Eagles probably played zone coverage, what, 90% of the time all year? Am I right when I say that? They probably played zone coverage 90% of the time. And get this, Kansas City couldn't beat you deep. They beat you in those crossing routes. They didn't have Tyreek Hill. 90% of the time, people were telling me all year long that the Eagles had the best corner duos, and you never played press coverage. That's not an actual and factual statement. Darius Slay ain't worth $18 million. No way. No way. Dude, that kid, Sauce Gardner, that's a shutdown corner. Eagles don't have one. That kid, CJ Gardner, I love him. It's a priority you sign him. Gannon is Jim Schwartz 2.0. Jim Schwartz got a Super Bowl ring as a coordinator. Jay Quest, that's not a fair comment. He won. Look at Steven. See what Steven just said? An elite quarterback kills zone coverages all day. Been a trait since he's been to DC of a year ago. Remember I told you on Friday? Jonathan Gannon ain't better. You just got better players. He's the same guy. And it reared its head in the Super Bowl. He's the same guy. He was never going to, I said the Eagles would win this game handily because you had all the advantages. And Kansas City took every advantage away from you. Your O-line, your running game, not your passing game. I thought Jalen was great. The turnover killed the whole performance. But I looked through the whole thing because if Jalen's not on the field, Kansas City blows you out. Hey, I'm convinced of this. If Kansas City had a couple more minutes on the clock, they'd have put 2 more TDs on you. You didn't stop them. Manster, it's not so sad because I think you're going to get an opportunity to keep this thing going at least for another year. And I'm going to explain at the top here. Okay? And we're going to look at those free agents and we're going to re-examine a little bit. Both coordinators are interviewing for jobs in the NFL. Wow. Man. Hey, let me say this to you. I know Jim Irsay, and I know he's kind of a head case. Someone asked me a question on these guys, I'm going to go like this. I don't see it. This guy, they're 2 Nathaniel Hackett's, in my opinion. Watch this. Because they suck at their jobs, they'll probably be great head coaches. There's no experience on your staff. And it was, watch this, the 2 things that Howie Roseman has control of that he failed in that Super Bowl. He never addressed special teams, and his coaching staff, he loves yes guys. Those 2 components were a complete factor in how the Eagles got beat Sunday night. Man. And the Eagles continually protect these coordinators like they're good. Hey, by the way, where was that pass rush? 0. Goose egg. They got to Mahomes. Mahomes had a bad wheel, and you still couldn't get home. Dude, lesser talent everywhere. You were right, Sills. Gannon played prevent defense the entire Super Bowl. And you know what, Marky Dan? How do you consistently tell me, not you, but how can you tell me that your secondary is the best in the league when you play against Tyler Heineke, Davis Webb, Josh Johnson, Davis Mills? These are Kirk Cousins' empty calorie stats. They had no adjustments in that ball game. I'm going to look at who's staying and who I'd get the hell out of town. And I'm going to take the entire year. And then we'll see whether or not the Eagles will be in contention. I believe they will. I believe they will. I want to do that. By the way, there's no guest today. It's just me and you. Why would I put a guest on? I'm not in a good mood. You had this thing. You know, I'd rather get my face kicked in than lose like that. I'd rather get my head kicked in. Drag me up and down the field, kick my ass, you're the better team that day, than to lose because of inexperience. And it's something that I never thought would rear its head that bad. Okay? I'd rather have my ass kicked so bad than to lose like that. Best team in Eagle history. Laid an egg. Not the quarterback. Not Devonta. Not AJ. Shit, I thought Goddard played well. I did. I thought the skilled guys were good. Your defense was atrocious. And Mahomes made him look common. How don't you address special teams if you're Howie Roseman, if you're running the entire roster? It's very disappointing. I'm disappointed. Dude, again, I don't mind getting beat. With great effort, great coaching, people get beat in this sport. First trap game on turf. Howie ignored special teams because he only wants credit for flashy shit, Dan. Yeah. And get this. Here's someone else who's at fault for your shitty special teams. So Nick Sirianni and all the coaches don't go to the front office and address it? Because you know why? They can't. Not playing top-tier quarterbacks all season was the downfall. Correct. Nobody on that coaching staff thought enough to go to management. Shit, when you couldn't stop the run, you went and got Linval Joseph. You went and got Dominic Sue. You mean to tell me you couldn't gone and got a returner? Eagles were able to replace Vincent and Taylor with Brown and Shepard because we had Dawkins. I say keep CJ and replace Slay and Bradbury. I'm going to get to that. Darman, I would do everything in my power not to let Kelsey retire because he had a great year. Sills, last night's outcome gives Roseman what he loves. He can blow it up and start over Start focusing on the Nova. Yeah, he loves doing that. He loves lighting it on fire and building it back up and then taking credit for building it back up, even though he's the guy that lit it on fire. Totally. They are winning. Howie got complacent with special teams. Yeah, how can you be complacent with special teams when you haven't had them all year? Well, okay, because they were winning all year. Okay, I want to look at these free agents, and I want to put a team together for you. A little more on the game last night. I thought by the way, for the record, I thought it was a spectacular Super Bowl. I thought it was a spectacular Super Bowl. Fans were treated. You got a chance to see some really young quarterbacks. You got a chance to see a lot of talent. There's talent all over the field. By the way, for the record, Chris Jones was a force. He was a force. He crushed Sayamalu last night. He was a force. And I'll tell you how they stopped the run game of the Eagles. I'll tell you what they did that was different than what the 49ers did and what the Giants did. Sombra, look at the losses this year. The offense gets to the line late 10 seconds to go. Repeatedly, I blame coaches. Absolutely. Hour number 2, it's us today, by the way. No guest. There's no need. It's us. We're going to put the pieces back together again. Okay? We're going to move forward. Still looking back what happened last night. But we're going to put the pieces together here. Hour number 2, hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.